Chapter 5. Not Wisdom, but Authority. He considered himself, above most things, as a good boy. That's because he was a dog, and dogs only ever hear "good boy" and "what do you have in your mouth, spit it out right now." While this pupper was not the smartest genetically engineered space dog, he was at least 54% certain he was not a "what's in your mouth." It had been a week since he was moved out of the high school's biology department and to the animal armory in anticipation of getting his first real assignment. While what actually entailed his assignment eluded him, he did know for a fact that good boys get treats, and gosh darn it, he was going to get himself some belly rubs if it was the last thing he did. Students had been filtering in since after lunch, but much later than had been anticipated. The scuttlebutt from the Zebos was that something had happened at the school that caused the delay, but he couldn't make head nor waggly tail out of it. He was hoping to get a team before dinner time, but the "what do you not have in your mouth" alarm in his tummy told him that it was increasingly not likely to happen. With the emphasis placed on earth animals this term, many of the more fun animals, like chimpanzees and platypuses, were long since claimed, while many breeds of dog, from bulldog to sheepdog, to maybe even some chicken dogs and horse dogs, had found a home. This poor little fellow was as unattended as a piece of bacon on the edge of a middle-aged man's plate. Just wanting to find their way into a person's heart. "Well, we can't do anything until we pick out an animal from the armory, so there's no point in doing anything else until we finish this first." The noise of a Hanguk female firmly grabbed the animal's attention. "We took too long at the study cafe looking up Earth history stuff, and now all the best animals are going to be gone," echoed the voice of a Zungo male. Our animal friend would have been hurt if he had known the implications of those words, but right now the only context he was searching for included dog and bull. "They still have a few dog breeds left," came a softer female voice, but the dog couldn't quite place her species from just her smell. "Maybe we can find a Malamute or a Husky?" All of a sudden, the face of a Nippon male appeared, as if out of nowhere, in front of the cage, almost startling the medium-sized dog. "How about this guy?" the young man asked, looking at the patchy brown, black and white fur of the animal. "It's kind of small," the Zongo male stated in a disappointed tone. "Of course it is," the unknown female voice chimed in. "It's a basset hound." She pushed the Nippon male aside in order to open up the cage. She picked up the long, droopy ears that dangled at the animal's sides. They were bird-hunting dogs, known for their sense of smell. "Well," the hound thought, "I don't think you would speak so highly of me if you knew what you smelt like right now, garlic queen." The Hanguk female bent down in order to get a better look and wrinkled her nose at the up-close look of the beast. "Kind of ugly, isn't he?" "Well, you're no prize yourself, sister." I can't even finish that joke. You are a fairly pretty lady, even if your choice in hounds is a little lacking, the dog thought to himself. "Hey, you guys wanted to start looking around for mysteries," the Zongo male called out. "And hounds are known to be great at finding clues. I say we go ahead and take them." "Oh, aren't you a sweetheart?" the dog thought to himself. "I will fetch your slippers every day and—" "Even if it is uglier than sin." "And poop in them." The dog tried to mean-mug the young man, but his sad-looking eyes only made him look more lovably pathetic. "Let's keep him," the Nippon male said, with all the authority of a raccoon being caught in a garbage can at 3 a.m. "I think he would make an excellent addition to our team." "Oh, I like this one," the dog thought to himself. "He's like a fish. Not the bad kind that look tasty and then bite you on the nose, but the good kind that are just tasty and already dead." The support corps officer behind the recreations desk walked over to the group, his black and pink cap in hand, and handed Francis a palm computer. "I need a class number and a name." "Class 431, Francis Rogers." The dog's name is Francis Rogers," the officer replied, incredulously. "No, I thought— Oh, never mind." Francis looked down at the dog's name tag. "Space Dog Specimen 648, it read. A smile slowly materialized on his face as he said with absolute confidence, "Space Dog!" A long exhale from the officer clued the students in that This was not the first time, and would not be the last time, that such a name graced his log. You want to name your space dog... Space dog? Francis nodded his head, quite pleased with himself. If he had turned around to see the faces of his teammates, he would not have been so proud. Space dog it is, the officer said, taking the palm computer from them and placing his cap on his head. He lives with the team leader, but all group members are responsible for his care. You hear? While there were some protests from his fellow classmates, Francis did not hear them. He looked Space Dog in the eyes and uttered the 3 words every woman wants to hear. Are you hungry? No, I'm Space Dog. As the group waited in line at the Student Union Club registration office, Francis used the opportunity to introduce the group to its newest member. I'm Francis, he said, picking Space Dog up and touching noses together. That's Karel, came next as he turned the dog around to see the girl sitting down leaning her back on the wall. She's a human from Earth. So that's what that smell was, Space Dog exclaimed to himself. Turning the dog slightly to the right was another familiar face, / smell, waiting in line with them. And this is Nichol. Yeah, and I'm Kenny, came the loud voice right beside them. And I'm not calling you Space Dog. It makes me look like some kind of mental patient running around calling that out. Kenny looked the basset hound up and down before exclaiming, I know. I'll call you SD. For super deformed? Space Dog worried to himself. You know, for Space Dog, but cooler. Oh, that makes a lot more sense than super deformed. We need to hurry up and do our homework so we can go back home, Karel said, slightly banging the back of her head in the wall behind her. The stuff we were studying in the cafe earlier about the states. Francis carefully put SD down with a little head pat for good measure. First, we have to register a school club, he stated, pointing at the front desk they were slowly approaching. Every cadet has a curfew and can't associate after school hours unless they have an officially registered club. He's right, Nichol stated, bending down to hand SD something from her pocket. I've lived here all my life. They don't mess around with enforcing curfew. SD sniffed at the object in Nichole's hand before accepting the crumbly bread-like peace offering. There shall be no more war between our people, SD thought, licking the snack from her hand. Ew, gross dog drool, Nichol squealed, pulling her hand back. Our people have never known such dishonor, and we will hunt you down to the ends of the universe. Nichol pulled one more from her pocket and dropped it in Esty's mouth. May the blessings of 1,000 harvests grace your kin, madam. If we want to get to the bottom of this mystery, Francis started to say, as his expression became his more somber usual self, then we need to be able to work together between classes. Who even said there was a mystery? Karel whined, clearly showing her displeasure at the situation. Kenny stepped out of the line of students to join Karel by the wall. I'm with Francis on this one, he said, leaning over to lock gazes with her. Trust me, I'm a Zongo, and that's just not how we react to old age. Heck, he wasn't even old enough to have gone through the next great examination. Karel turned her eyes away from his and stood up in order to brush some of the dust off the back of her uniform. We covered that in school briefly. You guys have to pass a test every 20 years in order to not die, right? Not exactly, Kenny started to explain, but for some reason not obvious to the group, he stopped short of giving an actual answer. They age extremely slowly, Nichol stepped in, but every year they grow older, it requires more and more calories in order to maintain their youthful strength. At some point, they realized not everyone was worth the strain on their resources, and so developed an examination to weed out the less productive members of their society. And kill them off? Karel exclaimed with a very accusatory look on her face. No, Francis started, after covering Esty's ears. They just stop giving them the food they need to maintain their strength, and they just lose it over time until they pass. It's a different process than what you humans go through. Doesn't make it any better, Karel muttered, slumping back down into her seated wall-leaning position. I suppose so. Kenny seemed lost in thought again, like he was physically looking in the distance for what he wanted to say, but couldn't find the answer. Either way, a club is how we can spend more time together outside of school legally, Francis stated, picking up SD and moving up in the line. Who says I even want to spend time with a lot of you outside of school? Karel muttered under her breath. She thought no one could hear her, but SD hears all. He sees all. He smells all. Well, this mostly pertained to food dropped on the floor, but his skill set was ever increasing. Now at the front of the line, Frances was greeted by an officer whose facial expression betrayed the fact that she was supposed to be home a few hours ago. Class number, group number, and club purpose, she inquired without looking up from her palm computer. With a big smile plastered across his face, Frances took a deep breath and answered, Class 431, Group 4, Mystery Club. That makes it sound like we're studying mysteries, not trying to solve them, Nichol interjected. We should be a detective club. We can do both. There won't be things to detect every day, Kenny argued. I don't care. Just hurry up, Karel cried, continuing her light head-banging motion. That's it, Frances exclaimed proudly. The Thucydides, Galactic, Imperial, Mystery, High School, Detective, and Mystery Club. You know, the club registration also includes the name of your assigned animal assistant, right? The officer clarified, again typing away without looking at the students. What's its name? Space Dog? Frances answered, expecting to be scolded for not picking a real name. Little did they know that this officer had been working with high schoolers for 2 decades, and just today already registered a cat named Meow Zedong and a chicken named Pol Pot Pie, so nothing fazed her at this point. Congratulations, Class 431, Group 4, she began, finally looking up from her palm computer. The Thucydides, Galactic, Imperial, Mystery, High School, Detective, and Mystery Club, with a space dog, it is. As the door to the clubroom swung open, letting in just enough light to confirm the dirt shielding was still on the table and chairs, the group made their way in, fumbling to find a light sensor. Something must have tripped it, as the blinding overhead lamp flickered on and almost blinded those unfortunate enough to be looking up. SD was not among them, as he already found himself a nice, comfortable spot on a chair in the corner of the room and began taking up residence there. Looks like everything is nice and haunted, Karel bemoaned. Can we go home now? Literally every other class has already gone back home. Not until we just go over what we want to write for our group project, Frances replied, looking around the room for anything to write on or with. Nichol took out her palm computer and swiped over to their homework assignment. Why do we have states? Not why did we have states? Kenny inquired, half joking and half not wanting to misunderstand the assignment and have it affect his grade. Remember, we are specific Earth countries for this assignment, Karel clarified, somewhat condescendingly. We need to answer from their perspective, so, why did Japan have a state? Francis thought about the question seriously. His people had moved from states to planets to federations a long time ago, but at some time they had something similar. What makes people willing to give up some of their individualism and personal freedom to a higher organization like that? He wondered. Thinking back to his morning tea with his mother, he realized that he was doing something he didn't really want to do, but did so out of trust of his mother and fear of the alternative. People are generally afraid, he began, still trying to figure out his point as he spoke, and that fear drives them to want to find others to help them feel safer and work together. Without looking down, he already knew he was subconsciously rubbing the birthmarks on his fingers again. States were a way of collecting similar people together that they trusted to feel more secure, because in the end, people do what they must because they're afraid of failing. Being with others means you have a better chance to succeed. You have to dig deeper than that, Karel objected. If people were getting what they needed from their village, then there would be no reason for change after all. She thought back to her father's stories about how beautiful Earth was, and how most of it had been taken and used as materials for the Empire. Powerful people want more resources, and states were a more effective way of getting lots of people you could force into getting resources for you. The Empire is just a more modern version of that. She felt her face getting hot. Anger? Embarrassment? Regardless, she finished her thoughts. States are more efficient than villages for taking and controlling more for your empire. Nichol did not seem convinced. That's too broad of a generalization. If it really was just about resources, villages would just have traded more. The act of war and conquering others is wasteful if resources are your ultimate goal. She looked down at her slightly chipped, red-brown nails and thought back to her morning internal conflict. At some point, people were just families. And later, those became villages and then cities, right? People change over time, and what they think is normal changes too. She thought back to the day she asked for that unopened pink nail polish, and how happy it made her at one point in what felt like the distant past. Maybe states were just what people had slowly thought of as a new normal, until something different came along to change their minds. What people learned to accept because they couldn't change their fate and tried to make the best of it. I think all of you are partially right, Kenny butted in. Fear drives people to give up freedoms and come together into states. He thought about his family, their drive, their ambition, their success. It happened because they wanted to succeed above all else, even at the cost of others' ungos. Because they want power. Resources are just one shallow way of thinking about it. People want to survive and not die, so they compete and fight. States are just a large group of people working together to fight and survive. States are just people trying to not die. He said the word die much softer than he expected himself to. He wondered if the others picked up on his verbal slip-up. Maybe it was not normal at one point, but by that point in Earth's history, every leader knew they needed something like a state in order to gain enough power to keep their culture alive. The room briefly fell silent as the group reflected on their different interpretations. How were they supposed to write their assignment? Group projects already are the worst, but how about when no one can agree on what to even focus on? Before anyone could speak up, SD chimed in by letting out a large basset hound-sized fart. Thanks for your contribution, Karel snarked, holding her nose as best she could. We have enough space in the file to write down all of our thoughts, Nichol explained, feverishly typing away at her palm computer. Let's just do that and then meet together tomorrow after class to start our detective work. Everyone agreed. It was far too late at night to be debating any further, and they knew that the tensions in the room were not going to be alleviated with more disagreements. With all four members confirming palm addresses and giving their salutations, Francis scooped up the already napping SD in his arms and headed for the door. Maybe states come together just like we did, pal, Francis whispered to SD. Everyone for a different reason, but the same purpose. With another sleep fart that told Francis he needed to get this dog on a better diet as soon as possible, Francis stopped at the doorframe and looked back into the room that would be their detective headquarters for the next 4 years of their lives. It could use an air freshener,